I thought I'd share with you some results of a informal conference I had this week for a client. When you put in for a higher level review for something, you can request an informal conference, and you can do that yourself just without any representation. You can get an informal conference, or if you have representation, if you have a claims agent like myself or a lawyer or an accredited someone representing you, they can have an informal conference on your behalf. It's a conversation between you and the rater, the person who's looking at your claim, and you just point out to them what they got wrong. So a higher level review means you did not submit any new evidence. You think that the evidence they have is enough and they've just not considered it correctly. And so you just make your case. So in the case for my clients, when I submit a higher level review for a client, I submit the actual form, the higher level review form, and then I also submit a cover letter where I outline for the rater, hey, this is what went wrong. But then I also request, most of the time, I also request an informal conference so that we can talk about it. And if they have any questions, I can clarify, or vice versa. So on Monday, I had an informal conference on behalf of a client. And for the first time, this client requested that to be part of the conversation. So I was able to conference them in. And so the veteran was on the call. I was on the call as his representative. And then the higher level review officer was on the call. And all we did was point out to him what went wrong, what they did not consider, and what they needed to consider. So in this case, the veteran had jet fuel exposure as part of his job, and yet, because he was never deployed, the TERA memo, they just overlooked the fact that his MOS had jet fuel exposure. So his TERA memo it just said he had no toxic exposures, and therefore, basically all the things that he claimed were denied because they weren't tied to service because he had no toxic exposures, according to the official document from VA. And so on the call, I just said the baseline thing we need to do is correct this TERA memo and have it reflect the toxic exposures he had in service. And the reviewer agreed. We got off the phone. By that afternoon, it had already been done. The TERA memo had been updated. And then the decision on the higher level review was duty to assist, meaning VA realized they didn't consider everything they should have, and they have a duty to assist the veteran. And so they're going to reconsider those claims in light of that information that they didn't consider before. One thing that I want to point out, in addition to making sure that your TERA memo adequately reflects the exposures you had in service, also, when your higher level review decision comes back as a duty to assist, that means your claim isn't done yet. They've just transferred it from a higher level review into a supplemental claim. And that means you can submit new evidence. And it's not really ever laid out that way, because when they send you the decision letter that says VA found a duty to assist error and we're going to reconsider all of your claims in light of the new information that we ignored before or we didn't see before. That means now you can submit new evidence, because now it's a supplemental claim. And in the case of my client, we had the call on Monday. The rest of the week, I found all the studies and evidence that we needed to tie the health issues he's having to jet fuel exposure now that VA has conceded jet fuel exposure. And so I put it all together in a nice, pretty document. I outlined for VA, here's all the issues that my veteran's having. Here's all the studies that show that is tied to his jet fuel exposure. Now you have all the reason you need to give him service connection. So I wanted to point out those two things. One, that your TERA memo needs to actually reflect your exposures in service, and sometimes, a lot of times, they miss exposures related to your MOS. So that's something to pay attention to. And the other thing is, Once your higher level review is decided, if it is decided that it is a duty to assist error, then it turns into a supplemental claim. And if you have additional evidence, you can submit it, as well as personal statements. Those are always helpful. I find a lot of times my clients haven't done those before, and that can be incredibly helpful to give the rater and the VA an idea of how your service-connected conditions are affecting your life. Those are my tips from the experience I had this week helping a client with a higher level review.